Hi, my name is Hannah. Welcome back to my channel Savage Reads for the first normal book update of the year, but I figured I would do a quick little wrap up of how my year went last year, what my goals are for this year. So according to Goodreads, I read 162 books last year. And that is 54,454 pages. I know there are about 10 books that didn't end up on my Goodreads. I had a couple weeks where I just read light, fluffy books. I didn't mark them down, I didn't review them, and that was fun. Sometimes it's good to just have something I'm not thinking critically about for a minute. So I had a pretty good reading year. Overall, I read some really great books. I especially loved the books that I read out loud to my girls. I had a great time with that. But as for my personal reading, it was good. I don't know if it was always as meaningful as I would have liked. Once I have reached over 150 books, I think the impact of the individual books may go down. So my reading goal for this coming year is to try to read around 100 books. I don't want to go too far over, too far under. I'd like to stay around that. It is less than what I typically would read in a year, but it will give me time to focus on the individual books as I read them, to not try reading multiple things at once, and to slow down and try to enjoy the books and enjoy the time I have with them. For example, when I do a buddy read, instead of doing the buddy read and listening to another book at the same time, I might cut down and say I am only going to do the buddy read for this week and not think about other books, which means that some of my reviews on this channel may include a couple less books than is typical. Typically, I will review 4 books, and that might go down to 2 or 3, depending on how well I am doing at my goal. But that is my goal going into the new year, is to really enjoy and be more mindful about my consumption of books, and we will see how I do on that. Sometimes I get bored and I end up just reading a lot, but we will see how I do and if I can make my reading stick with me a little bit longer. So that is my reading update for the last year. If you missed my 2 wrap-up videos, I have my very best nonfiction books of the year and my very best fiction reads of the year, and those are 2 of my very favorite videos to make all year long. So make sure to go check those out. Let me know what you've read. Let me know what your favorite books of last year were. My TBR is getting so long, but there's so many good books out there, and I am excited to see what I get to this year. But as always, I want to give a crafting update. I am still stuck with my knitting, and I am knitting a sweater for my husband. So this is what I have got so far, but I am hoping that when I block it, the color work smooths out a little. So this is the top of the sweater. I haven't done the sleeves yet, and I'm just about to here. The color work is a little bunchy, but I'm hoping that it will block out smooth and nice. I actually made this pattern and then adapted the color work from a free drops pattern that I found. And then this is not what the collar is going to look like. I did a provisional cast on, and I am going to go back in and put some ribbing around the neck, and then we'll keep going with this sweater. It is a merino wool sweater. It is the Drops merino wool extra fine, and I am really enjoying working with it. Wool is often very itchy for me, so I hope that it doesn't irritate my husband, but it is a nice yarn, and I feel like he is going to really like it when it's done, and it seems to be about the right size so far. That is my project that I am currently working on, and on the next video I will update you on my progress. But for now, let's do a quick wrap up of some of the books I've read in the past couple weeks. This book was a recommendation from the channel The Pumpkin Files, and this is The Gathering by C.J. Tudor. And this is a detective murder mystery novel, but there are vampires. And I really liked the world building in this vampire book because it wasn't really these hidden societies of vampires and are they real or are they not? No, vampires have been an established part of this book's timeline. This book had vampires existing for as long as anyone could remember. And the book is focusing on our main character, Detective Barbara Atkins, as she goes to a village where a boy has been murdered and it looks like it was a vampire, and she is a vampire detective and she is going to go figure out if the vampire colony is at fault for this horrible crime. Now, I thought it was really an interesting device because the way that vampires were used in this book is as a stand-in for other maybe marginalized people, but also a marginalized people that isn't weak and never fights back. This is a group of people that they are bloodthirsty, they are powerful, and they are fighting back, but also they have been mistreated by society, and there are laws set in place that can keep them down and limit their opportunities. And I thought the world building was just really, really interesting with this book. I haven't read another vampire book that has this kind of setup, and this was in this snowed-in rural Alaska setting, and we have the vampires and we have the prejudiced townspeople who all want to kill the vampires, but that's illegal. And I really ended up enjoying this book a lot. I wouldn't say I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. It was perfect. There were some things about the characterization and how it all came together that I don't know if I loved, but overall, I really liked it just for being so interesting and such an interesting device and way to deal with things. You can definitely see some parallels to our actual world, and I thought it was a really great social commentary as well as a great vampire crime murder mystery thriller. So, Tiffany at Towering TBR recommended the book Impossible Creatures by Katherine Rundell. So I put this on hold at my library and I waited and I finally got it checked out and I started reading it, and then I thought, wait a minute. And I mentioned it to my daughter and she's like, oh yeah. And she brings it downstairs. She had the hard copy upstairs this whole time. So I put it on hold for nothing and ended up actually reading the copy that we own of Impossible Creatures, and it was cute. It was fun. It is a great middle grade-ish fantasy book. I am excited to see what happens in the sequel. I think it was a good one with a bunch of mythological creatures, fantasy world that is actually located within our own, and I enjoyed it. I was a little scattered. I read this right over Christmas. There was a lot going on. So my attention on this book was not the best. It was a lot of reading a chapter, forgetting about it for a day or two, coming back, reading another chapter. And so I don't know if my reading experience was the best with this, but I did find it to be an enjoyable read and enough that I want to know what happens next. And I know my daughter loves it, so I know that for a younger audience, it is especially great. So this next one, I seem to have lost who recommended it, but I read Boy Swallows Universe by Trent Dalton. And here, I'm just going to read the blurb on this one. Brisbane, 1983. A lost father, a mute brother, a mum in jail, a heroin dealer for a stepfather, and a notorious criminal for a babysitter. It's not as if Eli's life isn't complicated enough already. He's just trying to follow his heart, learning what it takes to be a good man, but life keeps throwing obstacles in the way, not least of which is Titus Brose, legendary Brisbane drug dealer. But if Eli's life is about to get a whole lot more serious, he's about to fall in love. Oh, and yeah, he has to break into Bogo Road Gaol on Christmas Day to save his mum. A story of brotherhood, true love, and the most unlikely of friendships, Boy Swallows Universe will be the most heartbreaking, joyous, and exhilarating novel you will read all year. Now, this book is very much set in Australia. The place is really there. And the story of Eli, he is a character you really connect to. He is really struggling. He is stuck in this world of drug dealers and criminals, but he wants to be a good kid. He wants to have a family that loves him, and he goes through some really difficult things. And there's this element of maybe thinking that there's something magical or special about him and his brother. I thought this book was really light and sweet for how awful a lot of the subject matter was that it dealt with. I mean, you're talking things about drug abuse and violence in the home and just so many really difficult situations. And I ended up enjoying it. I really liked it, but I did think by the end that things were a little bit too magically all put together, and I just wasn't sure if I loved how everything turned out. I found the romance aspect of this book to be really annoying. Honestly, that was not what I found compelling about the book. What I found compelling was the relationship that Eli has with his brother and his love he has for his mother. And I found those to be the most compelling factors getting me through the book. But the romance made me roll my eyes, say, why? And I honestly disliked every time it was brought up in this book. And so I thought this book was really well done. I really liked it, but there were some elements that did drive me crazy, and it is some really difficult subject matter. And so be aware of that going into it. I did think it gave a very relatable face to poverty in Australia and some of the problems that go on with drugs. And so maybe this works super well if you are looking for a bit of a social commentary on some of those issues. So this book was a recommendation from the channel Bookin' with Deborah, and this is The Familiars by Stacey Halls. So this is loosely set in the real Pendle Hill witch trials, and we are following a young noblewoman who is worried that she is going to die in childbirth, and the midwife that she hires, and how it all gets caught up in the witch trials. I thought that part was super interesting. I thought the author had some really good ideas on how privilege plays into who is getting accused of witchcraft. One part that really stands out to me, and I am paraphrasing because I did not mark this down, was her husband asks, "Hey, do you think any of those people talked to the devil?" And she said, "Well, if the devil is poverty and hunger and being in these bad situations, then yes, that's what they had to deal with every day." And I think that for that, it was really interesting. It had a lot of really difficult topics dealing with how women were treated in the 17th century. And I honestly think this book would have been better had it been longer, because while I felt like it dealt with some very difficult topics, I don't know if it really gave them space to be explored or discussed. It was the level of discussion that I would expect for a book that deals with a lot lighter of topics. And so I do think this book went a little too surface level when dealing with some of the ramifications would really be helpful. The main character is always going on about how much she loves her husband, and you have moments where you feel like she's understanding some of the things that are happening because of her husband, but I never feel like the main character really understood the real situation that she was in as a woman of the time period, and things were wrapped up just so sweetly. So I thought this book was okay. Like, there were moments that I thought were really brilliant. I think learning about the witch trials was super interesting, especially because historically, often that is a way to oppress women. Talking about women's rights mixed in with that was really interesting, but I think we just kind of scraped the surface level of the feelings of these characters, of the why behind what they're doing, and I think the book could have done just a little bit more. And that is what I have read in the past little while. If you have thoughts on these books, let me know in the comments down below, and let me know how your 2026 in reading has started. Thanks for watching, and I will see you all on the next one.